Hey everyone, Kelly Dean Allen here with you again. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I love Aerosmith, but you'll also know that I much prefer the band's 70s output over the less bluesy, less riff-driven, more commercial Aerosmith 2.0 iteration of the band. And that would be true. However, I still like Aerosmith 2.0 a lot, and each and every album still had some real kick-ass numbers on them in between the ballads and the poppier stuff. And in the case of 1989's Pump, it's this killer track that kicks off the album, Young Lust. A dinosaur-eating cars opening track, as Joe Perry likened it to when he first wrote it. Well, today I'm going to show you how it's played, solos and all. Let's close in and get started, shall we? All right then, Young Lust, Aerosmith, Joe Perry, Brad Whitford, track 1 from Pump. We are in standard tuning for this tutorial, and this one starts like this. 3, 4. Drops into the first verse. So we're starting with a D5 power chord here, a D chord without the high E string. We're going to hit this twice on the downstroke, just like that, just the D, G, and B string. Then we're going to drop into a G chord, 3s of the B and the high E, open D, open G, G chord just on the top 4 strings. Just strum down those very quickly. Grab the 3rd fret of the A string, give it a little waggle off to an A power chord, hit that twice on the downstroke. D, D, G, C, A, A. And you're going to repeat that 4 times. However, the second time we're going to add this little lick. Right here. 3rd fret of the low E off to open A. Grab the 3rd fret of the A, pull it back off to the A power chord. Right, kind of like that, and repeat. 3, 4. Final time, off to E. For 4 bars. First 2 bars you're going to double hit, let it ring, and then double time the strumming for the next 2 bars. Right, and that drops into the first verse. Now, both guitar players are playing pretty much the same thing throughout this track, except when they go into E. One is going to the neck position, kind of like that. One is going up here to the 7th fret position of an E power chord. Kind of like that, right? So that is the intro. D twice, G, C, A, A. Repeat. D, G, C, A, A. Play the lick. And then the final time off to E. Right, and then we're into the verse riff. That right there, which we're going to be repeating 7 times before the mid-verse break of a couple of Ds, a couple of Gs. So we're grabbing the 5th fret of the D string here with our middle finger. We're giving it a full step bend right up to that note, right there, right, that A note. And then we're going to grab the 5th fret of the B string with our ring finger. We'll let those 2 notes ring together. Kind of like that, right? And then we're going to drop off to an A power chord. Very quick hit of the A power chord. Drop onto the 3 of the A. Pull it back off to the A power chord. Hit it 2 or 3 more times. Back onto the 3. Back off to the A. Kind of like that. And then repeat. And both guitar players are playing the same thing here. 4 times before the vocals come in, 3 more times with the vocals, and then we're going to drop into 2 Ds, and then 2 Gs, and then right into the second half of the verse. 3 more times. Back to D, back to G, and then back to E. 4 bars. Same thing we did at the beginning, right? Double hits, let it ring, and then double time the strumming. Into the next verse. 3 times. D, G, and then into E. Now this time, this song doesn't really have a chorus, but this time he's going to sing over this, right? So we're going to hang in this for 8 bars. Double hit, let it ring. Double hit, let it ring. Do it again. Now double time the strumming. Right, and then we drop back into the opening riff again. And over top of that is a slide solo. Now I'm not going to get my slide out for this, but I am going to show you all the notes. If you don't play slide, just play what I'm going to show you here. If you do play slides, play all of this with a slide. Right there, that is the slide solo. So we're here on 14 of the G, pulling it off to 12, grabbing the 14 of the D 3 times. Kind of like that. If you have a slide, slide it back to 12 and then slide it into 14, right? Now you're going to do it one more time, but the 4th time you're going to pull that 14 off to 12 right back onto 14, roll it down to 14 of the B, back up to 14 of the G. Right, kind of like that. And then we're into this. So double stop on the 12s of the G and the B, double hit, move it back 1 spot, slide it back into 12. Right, repeated twice. 3rd time, double hit that double stop and then slide it into 14. And then slide out of it. And then we're into this. Like I said, all done with slide, but we're going to slide into the 15 of the high E, pick it 3 or 4 times, and then go 15, 16, 17. When you get to 17, pick it again, slide it into 21. Kind of like that, right? Back to 17, up to 17 of the B, slide it back to 14, back into 15, back to 14. And then 14 of the G, slide it back to 12, grab the 14 of the D, and then 14 off to 12 of the G. Kind of like that, right? And then we finish the solo with this. Just sliding into a double stop on the 9s of the D and the G, let it ring again, and then double time. And then slide out of it. And that is the slide solo. And then we're right into the next verse. Right, 3 more times, drop into D, G, repeat. D, G, and back into E for 8 bars. Little nasty. A little sleazy. A double time. And then we're into the bridge. Now the bridge, they're both playing something, they're kind of playing the same thing, but in different positions. One is playing octaves. Leads into the guitar solo. So 10th fret of the A string, 12 of the G, muting out the D string in between, and then you're just going to back it up 1 spot to 9 and 11. And then we're going to go back to 10 and 12, and then off to 7 and 9. And slide that back to 5 and 7, and repeat. Then we're going to move the whole thing up 2 spots. Now we're on 12 and 14. Back it up 1 spot. Back to 12 and 14, then off to 9 and 11. Slide it back to 7 and 9, and then back to the original one time. At this point, when you get off to this D note here, or the 5-7, you're going to hit it twice, back it up to 3 and 5, off to 2 and 4. Off to an A power chord, starts the main solo, right? So those are the octaves. That twice. Move it up 2 spots. Back to the original one. Into the solo. Now the other guitar is playing the same notes, but just single notes here at the neck position. 3 off to 2, low E, then 3 off to open, and then grabbing that D note there at the 5th fret of the A, and repeat. 3, 2, 3, open 5 of the A, move everything up 2 spots, 5 and 4. And then 5, 2, open. Then back to the original one. 3, 2, 3, open 5. And then into an A for the solo. Now this solo is really chaotic, and the first half of it in A, using the A major scale, is really buried in the mix, really hard to hear what he's doing, but I've got a good feel for what he's going for here. This is not 100% note for note, but like I said, it's really buried in the mix, really hard to hear what he's doing. But it starts with a big bend on the 5th fret of the low E string, about a 2-step bend. Slow release, back to the natural note, pick it, and then off to an A power chord, right? That starts the solo. Slow release, and then he starts doing a whole lot of pull-offs. Kind of like that, right? So we're pulling off 7 off to 4 of the G off to open, back onto 4, pull it back off to open, kind of like that. Then you're going to back it up to 4 and 2 and do the exact same thing, right? Dropping back onto that 2, pulling it back off to open. And then we're going to do a whole bunch of pull-offs from the 4s to the 2s off to open, going from the G to the D to the A, and then reversing. Kind of like that, right? And when you get back to the G, you're going to go back to the D and then go right down the top 4 strings. However, when you get to the B and the high E, you're going to pull off 3 to 2 to open, right? Kind of like that. And when you pull off to open E, you're going to drop onto a double stop on the 2s, slide it into the 3s, right? That's the first half of the solo. Big bend, slow release, little vibrato, A power chord, and then all the pull-offs starting on that 7 of the G. Right? And now we're going to shift off into E. It's mostly E minor pentatonic work, but it's a bit of a mix of major and minor going on here. He starts on the major 3rd here, sliding into 13 of the G and then riding down the 12s. Right into a full step bend on the 15 of the B string. Into this lick. So 12 of the high E, 15 off to 12 of the B, and then you're going to drop down to the high E and do the same thing, and then back to the B and do the same thing. All pull-offs, right? And after you finally pull off to that 12 of the B, you drop onto 15 of the high E for a full step bend. Now you're going to rebend that a step and a half. Kind of like that, right? Now you're going to repeat the lick we just played, right? But when we get down to that 12 of the high E, we're not going to go back to the B string. We're going to drop into that and repeat it 3 times. Bending the 15 of the B, grabbing that 12 of the high E. Kind of like that, right? And then we're going to transition into this with a pull off from 15 off to 12, just bending the 14 of the G, 12 onto 15 of the B twice. And finishing with that. So little bend of that 14 down to a double hit on the 12, little double bend of that 14 off to 12 of the G, right? So from the beginning of this section here, step and a half, and then we finish the solo with this. Same like we played earlier, bending that 14, 12 onto 15 of the B twice, right? And then we're going to bend that 14 again, and then catch a little double stops on the 12s and repeat that twice. And then we drop into a unison bend on the 15 of the B, 12 of the high E, downstroke that 5 or 6 times, and slide out of it. And that is the solo. Let's take the second half here. Right? And let's have a quick look at the first half again. Big bend, release, A, all the pull-offs. Right, and we move off to E. Right into the verse riff again, but now we're going to choke it off on the A power chord. Kind of like that, right? Repeated 3 times. Down to D, into G, and repeat. Down to D, into G, and then we just drop right back into it and just continue it, right? Until the end of the track. And there you go. That is how you play Young Lust and Aerosmith. Certainly hope you enjoyed that, found it helpful. If you did, please hit that like button right down there. Drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be very kind. Hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may find you, and we will see you next time. Cheers.